And we'll see you tomorrow morning. Thanks again. Going through one's teenage years is stressful to many youngsters, and it has become even more so to this age group due to COVID-19, the lockdowns, the disruption to schooling, social activities. This week is Teen Suicide Prevention Week, and it aims to highlight awareness around teen depression and suicide prevention. According to the World Health Organization, suicide is the third leading cause of death in 15 to 19-year-olds. With the added and in some instances traumatic effects of COVID-19, South African teens are especially at risk as they navigate a new world of online learning or delayed learning, social isolation, loss, grief and trauma, with increased anxiety and depression. Well, to tell us more about this, let's chat to Chris Kemp, a psychologist at the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. That, of course, is SADAG. Chris, great to have you. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolute pleasure. So what can you tell us about the calls that you've been receiving from teenagers that have been stressed by the effects of COVID?
I work quite a lot with teens, and I was almost quite surprised to find how much many teenagers have outright hated or found or really, really struggled with the distance learning. I think the sort of cliche, or what people imagine, is that kids not going to school, they must be loving it, but they've all really, really hated it. And the more I've thought about it, the more it makes sense, in the sense that in our teenage years, that's really when we are developing our social skills. It's probably the most social time of our lives. We build our identities around other people. We engage with other people. We learn to develop relationships. So I think they're really, really struggling with the isolation, or the continued isolation, of not having that daily interaction.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big, big issue because, humans, I suppose, are social beings. And even though, some may welcome it just in the beginning to think, this is so nice. I can wake up and I don't have to go early to school and I can maybe just sit there online. But then when it keeps on, the novelty starts wearing off and the reality starts setting in, that your bedroom becomes your classroom, becomes your social room, becomes your everything. This I can only imagine has a massive mental effect on you.
Absolutely, and a lot of teens simply struggle to engage in online learning. They struggle to absorb the work that way. They struggle to sort of maintain the necessary discipline. A lot of them are falling behind. So I've actually noticed that it's had a massive effect on teens' mental health, which was, to be honest, already a problem. There's a huge amount of pressure and expectation on teenagers. I think especially in this day and age, I often feel like I had a lot easier when I was a teen compared to what our teens face today.
Yeah. So if we get back to what SADAG have noticed and the calls that you've been receiving, is it from a lot of the teens that have actually contracted COVID, or actually, being isolated and ostracized because of having COVID?
I would say it's far more the secondary effects of COVID. Most of the teens I speak to aren't stressed about the virus. I think a lot of them consider it to not really be a threat to them. Some are a little bit worried about their parents, but for the most part, it's much more the secondary effects in terms of the social isolation, the disruption to their routine. Teens really work well with structure. And obviously that's what parents do, is try and create structure for them in school, but they've now lost that because of this virus and how it's disrupted all of our routines and structures. So it's very hard for them to navigate. They feel that social isolation, and it's just been a really, really difficult time for them, that I've noticed. And I think that suicidal thoughts, self-harm amongst teenagers is a huge problem as well. And it's become far more widespread in the last couple of years that I've noticed. It's really becoming a problem.
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine two groups. One would think are the most vulnerable are those who have started matric this year, because there's a lot of pressure on them. And I think that they also very nervous and very worried that, if they do get sick, they're going to lose so much of the year, and that, of course, is going to be detrimental to their future. And then the second group are those that are about to matriculate because results are coming out. It was a very turbulent year for them, and a lot is balancing on these results. So are those the two groupings that you're particularly concerned about?
Absolutely. And I think as adults, we kind of forget, matric feels like a distant memory, and we realize that it's not the be all and end all of everything. But when you're that age, that is kind of your whole world, your whole focus, everything in your life feels funneled to this point. And to have that disrupted can be very, very detrimental to their mental health, because they just seriously, like you say, just very, very stressed and not able to engage in the way that they would like to. They feel like their whole life depends on this one exam or this one set of results. And now all of that has been disrupted, not just their learning process, but also the uncertainty around what their next couple of years are going to look like. So, yeah, absolutely, they feel a lot of additional pressure because of that academic pressure that they feel, especially around matric.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge thing, because the results, as we know, are coming out on Monday. How do you mentally prepare for this? Because you go back to the beginning of 2020, the year started normally, we were kind of normal now, and then next month, as in last year, in March, things just went absolutely pear-shaped, and there was this massive disruption that, of course, affects concentration. It affects learning ability. You're watching people struggling around you. You're focusing on so much, and then to focus on your schoolwork and matric. I mean, it was just a big shambles of a year, to say the least. But how do we try and help these matrics that, this is not the end of the world? However, this is a lot of their future riding on this.
Absolutely, and I think especially for parents, it may be a really great idea to have a conversation with your child. If you do have a child sort of in matric now or expecting results, talk to them about their expectations, talk to them about your expectations, and just sort of reinforce for them that whatever the outcome is, that you can work through it. I think that when we get so narrowly invested in one perspective, we feel like our whole life is over if our matric results are bad. And that's where we get stuff like suicide risk and things that really concern us. So I think it's important to zoom out on the perspective and say, okay, look, this isn't ideal if you don't get the marks that you want. But what's important to remember is that we can work through this. And I think that parents need to feel safe to have that kind of difficult conversation with their children, because one thing that's very much in common is that teenagers don't talk to their parents nearly as much as they should, often feel like they can't, often feel like their parents will be disappointed. So a lot of parents are shocked to discover what teens are talking about to their friends or what their teen is feeling. So I think if we can do anything, it's just sort of to open up this conversation. If you can say, hey, how are you feeling about your matric results? Are you feeling overly stressed? Have you thought even about suicidal thoughts or self-harm or anything like that? If you normalize that as something that they might expect to feel, they feel less unsafe to talk to you about it, because they feel like, okay, you kind of get that that's a possibility. So I'm not going to be completely shocking you when I come to you with these feelings. So we really want to normalize conversations around mental health in general.
Yeah.
There's nothing that can't be sort of solved or resolved. So as long as we can get the teen talking about it, I think that's really the first step.
It certainly is. I mean, it's a step in the right direction. If you get somebody who, wouldn't normally talk about it to actually open up about it, it's a big thing. But I want to just speak a little bit about the teen suicide rate and the kind of things that you have been seeing. Has there been an increase? Obviously, it's numbers that I certainly don't want to be looking at, but one needs to have a look and see how our teens are actually doing during this time. Have you seen an increase, or has it stayed the same? Has it dropped? What are we looking at?
I don't have the exact numbers on hand, but I believe that there has been an uptrend in general over the last sort of few years in teen suicide. And I think it comes down to how much pressure teens are experiencing. The world itself has become a more demanding place, especially for young people and the expectations placed on them. And I think that this COVID crisis is only going to make things worse. Social isolation is a massive contributor towards depression, suicidal thoughts. The way that they communicate now opens up channels towards cyberbullying and feeling even more isolated. So there's a lot of additional stresses. So it is a concern. And that's why I think every parent needs to just feel comfortable to talk to their teen about it. Even if you feel like your teen is the most happy-go-lucky, chilled person, just have the conversation. It's much better to at least know that they can talk to you if they are feeling this way, because as soon as we can open up that conversation, we can prevent tragedies.
Yeah, and that's what you need, parents to be vigilant. But it's hard on parents as well, because they are also going through the most. I mean, you've got so many parents that have lost their jobs, that perhaps are not even able to pay for school fees, and that they were going to pay deposits for universities, are not able to do that anymore because of job losses, because one of the parents may have also lost their lives. I mean, there are so many reasons that families are going through the most at the moment, and we have to be vigilant to it. So, as we say, parents need to be vigilant, but I suppose it's a time as well for friends to be friends, and also to notice, and teachers, if you do go back to school and if you see somebody is not looking themselves, do something about it. I mean, what should you be looking out for?
I think, if you are someone's friend, then you know them very well. And I always encourage people to look out for any changes. We think of depression as people just sort of feeling sad or down all the time, but that's not necessarily the case. Someone might be more irritable. Someone might be just more tired or more disengaged or just more withdrawn. I think social isolation is a big one, which is harder to detect in this time, unfortunately. But also, being more irritable, having a shorter temper, just your friend not seeing themselves. Reach out to them, ask if they're okay. If you get the feeling that they're not, I would encourage friends of teenagers to consider talking to someone like a teacher or a parent, because we don't want to put the responsibility on them. One thing I've noticed a lot is that teenagers take a lot of responsibility for each other, and teens message each other about their suicidal thoughts and their self-harm. And they take so much responsibility for each other that's actually too much for them. It really is the parent's responsibility to look after their own child. So we always encourage teenagers, if you are seriously worried about your friend, contact their parents. They might be irritated with you in the short term, but just say, hey, I'm not saying anything, but I'm just saying, I think, my friend Bruce is not doing okay. I think you need to check on him. I have kind of a bad feeling, anything like that. It doesn't have to be a huge deal, but just to notify parents, hey, my friend's not doing okay. But if you're friends with someone, you know them well. So just look out for changes. That's really what it comes down to when we talk about depression. Speak
out before it's too late, because sometimes,
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, it is too late. But there is SADAG. I'm not sure if we've been rolling the number across the screen. I haven't actually looked. I think we have been. You're there. You're there all the time. It is Suicide Prevention Week, Teen Suicide Prevention Week. Please, if anybody is going through anything, you guys are there, and we know you're always there. So, Chris, thanks for the work that you and your team are doing at SADAG. Chris Kemp is a psychologist at the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, talking to us about suicide and depression amongst teenagers during this COVID-19 time. 0800 567 567. It's a 24-hour suicide hotline. There's an SMS line as well, 31393. A counsellor will call you back. And you can also visit their online toolkit for teen suicide prevention. That's www.sadag.org. Please keep these numbers close and that information close by. That's it. That's where we leave you for today. Thank you very, very much for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful Tuesday. Back with you again on Wednesday. Sakina will be with us as well. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.